Hey, everybody. Greetings. I guess you're there. We were going to actually jump over the couches and do something fun and different and unconventional, but this is a serious topic. We can't be as funny as we usually are. Hello, sir.
Hi.
So, why aren't you with Donald Trump today?
I don't know.
I thought the answer was going to be because you were going to come to the Atlantic event and talk about inclusion and diversity, but you could have been the inclusion and diversity, kind of rider in the Donald Trump meeting, right?
This seems like a very good way to spend my afternoon with you talking about inclusion.
For those of you who don't know, that many of Devin's CEO colleagues of the area are meeting with Donald Trump today, talking about the economy, how to get it right. He's meeting with Tim Cook, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and others. But we were together in Washington not too long ago, around in April, and you made this fascinating comment, which is why I think we're here today. You said that Silicon Valley at its worst is a kind of bro economy. It's a 23-year-old engineer that's a stereotype, and it's also kind of true that that cycle is hard to break because the term unconscious bias is really important. And you said that young white engineers aren't going to hire black women engineers. And I'm wondering, as you framed that, and it was so powerful that day, what do you think is required and necessary to sort of shift that frame and culture, which arguably has produced the most successful piece of geography in the history of the planet?
Yeah, so look, I think beliefs and behaviors and biases are really powerful things. And they can be positive things. And Silicon Valley is a great example of how the ecosystem and the culture has created a remarkable place, both physically and metaphorically. Every year you hear, here's the next Silicon Valley, and there never is.
Right.
This is a very, very special place, and it is in the water. It is the belief system. I moved out here from the East Coast because I so passionately believe in innovation.
You work for a Canadian company, right?
Well, it wasn't Canadian back then, but
okay,
it is
well,
now.
Thomson Reuters. But you got in here, and you came in to this area. Did you come in from a bro, or?
No, it wasn't, but this is where I always wanted to be because I wanted to be part of that ecosystem that so passionately believed in innovation and building. But the 3 Bs can also be very negative and difficult to break. And the truth is, one of the things that I found when I came out here is I don't always think it's about ill intent. I haven't really found a lot of ill intent. What I have found is very strong inertia, and very strong inertia that at its worst can be a bro culture where they say, look, I've worked my entire life with young white engineers, and they're good, and they're successful. So if that's what I know, I'm going to keep doing that. And directly to your question, when I was invited, I was delighted to come here because I think that the only way to break those powerful ecosystems and that powerful inertia is less talk and more action. And the action is about real things that companies can do, and I guess I represent the big companies, some of the founding fathers of Silicon Valley, to not stare at the problem and give speeches about the problem, but to say we're doing a series of things that won't change the world overnight, but they will change the world. And I do think that it can be done, and I see it in my company, and we are making progress, and I see it around the valley, and I think there is an optimistic case, but it's a journey, and there's a lot of work to do.
When we met in April, you said that your African-American employees were 8% of the company. And we showed a graph, a chart up here at the very beginning, and the highest number of African-Americans in a company was Apple, and also 8%. Is 8% the high bar that you should feel proud about? Is it a low bar and you got to tell, every other major company we looked at was sort of at the 1% or 2% level on that chart. But I mean, is that not just shameful?
So, well, what I'd say is, I don't know what the right number is. What I think we should be is reflecting our market. And our market is, in many ways, the consumers of the world. That's what eBay's business is. I think one of the ways to take action is I don't think companies always understand why this is an issue. They think of it in negative terms. They think, I need to do this because I don't want to get beat up on it. I don't want the media to come attack me about it. I don't want a negative story, and I don't want my board breathing down my neck because of some issue called inclusion. That's the worst reason to have this on the agenda. I talk about it in terms of I authentically believe that we will not compete in the marketplace if we don't reflect our customers and if I don't create an environment where the best talent wants to come to eBay. And that is an inclusion agenda, right? If this is Silicon Valley. It's rough out there in the talent wars. We lose people all the time. We hire people all the time. It is got some of the highest turnover of any place in the world.
That is a positive, constructive frame. I mean, when I was listening to Ron Brownstein up here in the last panel, he was asking about pipeline and issues, and part of me has been asking with today's forum whether or not the challenge or the fix is to look at the fact that talent is being left on the table. And if that talent were part of the pool, there'd be greater profitability, greater productivity, greater success, and that leaving that talent on the table or not in the door, there's a consequence to that we're there. Or is it a function of just fairness and what we've been hearing, empathy and these kind of softer social issues? But is there an economic rationale in your mind, which I just heard you make?
I think if there's not, we have a big problem, and there is. So of course it's about empathy and it's about doing the right thing, but we're running a business and we're competing in the marketplace, and my job is to create value for my shareholders, my employees, and my customers. To me, inclusion is that agenda. It's not a different agenda. It's not we're running a competitive business and then we're trying to do something good in the world. Yes, we're trying to do something good in the world, but if I don't create an environment where the best women engineers and the best black engineers and the best Hispanic engineers want to come authentically to eBay, not because of some corporate speech, but they feel like they can be their best selves, I'm not going to win in the talent war. And conversely, I actually think we have created a great environment, and we get more talented people who might have gone to a sexier startup or a different company at a different stage of its environment because they feel like these guys get it, and there are other women here, and I actually don't have to leave my best self at home. It is about the talent war. And I think if you convince your company to really believe that, that's how you make progress rather than here's a target, 8% needs to be 9%. I don't know what exactly the right number is. I know that when we reflect our customers, we will compete better. I know when the best people, regardless of what their background is, want to come to eBay, we will compete better. And that's why I'm so passionate about it.
As you look around Silicon Valley at other CEOs that are struggling with this, I mean, I'm impressed with the frame you just brought. Do you look at this, the way you just looked at this as a competitive advantage between you and is it not in your interest, for instance, from a corporate perspective, for all of them to get better at inclusion?
I'd like to see everybody get better. I'd like to get better than everybody else faster. I mean, that's. Let me be brutally honest.
It is interesting, right?
If I'm really in the talent war, of course I want Silicon Valley to get better. I cringe when I see the accurate stories about the issues in Silicon Valley. That doesn't make me feel proud of the brand. But my job is to run eBay, and I'm going to make eBay better as fast as I can so that I can compete and I can get the best people. One of the things worth saying is, just beyond the numbers, we've started to look at the problem much more holistically. Oftentimes this conversation immediately goes to, tell me how many women are in your company. That is important, but I actually think it's a very narrow view, and it's not actually helping advance the agenda particularly. We have started talking about this inside of our company as the workforce, the workplace, and the marketplace. The workforce is hiring. It's who we retain. It is about the numbers. It's, are we getting the best people or are we not? And what does that look like over time? The workplace is about an environment when those people come, they feel welcome. They feel included and not excluded, and they don't look around like, hey, I'm the only one here. What am I doing here? And the marketplace is our product. It's the way we reach out to the world, and that's part of the inclusion agenda too. I'll just give you one example. We hired recently a phenomenal chief diversity officer, and I think one of the reasons we were able to get somebody so talented is I didn't say, you need to come in here and turn my 8% black engineers into 9%. That is part of what we want to do. But another thing that I said is what I really want you to do is I want you to build a program where we take eBay out to inner cities and we create thousands of underprivileged entrepreneurs supported on our platform so that when we talk about our social impact, it's unique to us. It's authentic. And that our inclusion agenda is as much about the way we show up outside the company as inside. And that resonated. And I think that's incredibly important because, again, it ties to what we do. It's not another thing. It's what we do.
Let me ask you a question. This is probably going to be a dangerous question for me to ask, but I mean, I don't know. It's only been out for a day. But how many of you have read Ta-Nehisi Coates' new piece that just came out called "My President Was Black"? If you haven't read it, treat yourself to it. It will take you a week to read. It is longer than hell. I mean, it's just really, really long. But it's an unbelievable personal discourse, about Barack Obama, and it's filtered through Ta-Nehisi Coates' experiences. But in there, he talks about how Obama was, by his mother and by his grandparents, always fed the positive dimensions, the engagement dimensions, the heroic dimensions of being black, not the ones that were negative. And so when I'm listening to you, I sort of hear that in the way that you're talking about this. But it also starts out with a vignette of President Obama at a BET party, Black Entertainment, I guess, television party. And it reminds me of the old days. BET was really set up because they were not being let in the doors of others. Is there the capacity in some of the ethnic communities that feel left out, not empowered, to challenge this order here on I shouldn't say on their own, but with allies and others, to begin thinking? I mean, we're talking about people trying to fight up through Intel and eBay and Apple and Google, but is there some way that, or is that a silly notion here in Silicon Valley?
I don't think it's silly at all. And again, I do think that when this agenda becomes the business agenda, then it's a natural. I'll just give you one more example. We are very serious about recruiting, obviously. Every company here is. We're very serious about our intern programs because the beginning of our pipeline is when we reach out to colleges. So we just hosted a group of prospective interns for next summer from historically black colleges. It was the most positive event. And you can't fake it. Like, they know if they're wanted, and they know if they're wanted because of their talent or for another reason. And they are so enthusiastic, just like the energy around interns and the energy around a group showing up in Silicon Valley and showing up at these great companies, and people saying, we want you because you're a great engineer, and we need great engineers. It was such a high energy event that I absolutely think that we got to move to, first of all, we have to move to a more holistic view beyond the numbers. The numbers matter. Like, when I say that, I worry that people think that's a way to skirt the numbers. We publish
you put out your numbers.
We do, and we're gonna, and we always do that. I think transparency. Sunlight is the best disinfectant in some ways. It always is. But you can't stop there. You can't stop at just saying, what are your metrics, and are your metrics getting better? There's so much more to this agenda, and if it's always beating people over the head, saying you're not doing, it's a different thing, and you've got to hit these numbers, and it's not a business agenda, we're just not going to make progress as fast as we could.
I want to go out to the audience in a minute, but we've got an incredibly diverse array of people here today, and some are in firms, some are working on this issue, some may be here just as writers and commentators. But for those who want to move the needle on this in inclusion, and the power side of the table, and there are a lot of people who feel not empowered in this equation, what's the best piece of advice you can give to this community about this agenda?
First of all, I'm sure there are companies and CEOs and leaders who don't actually have a good mind frame here or a good motivation, but I've met many more that do, and they're looking for help. And honestly, what they want is advice, and not kind of like, I'm just holding you at bay and I just want to hear from you so I can say I heard from you. They want help. They believe in this. They want to make progress. Many are struggling with how to make progress. So the first thing is, I think engagement is a great thing, and I think practical advice, here's what we saw worked, is welcomed by many more CEOs and leaders that I've seen than not. That's one thing. The second is back to the same point. Frame this along the agenda that people wake up in the morning worrying about. CEOs worry about their companies. They worry about their business. They don't sleep at night worrying about their competition. When this becomes part of that equation, it's a force magnifier. When it becomes run your business and compete, how about your inclusion agenda? You're working against the grain, and it shouldn't be because it is the same agenda.
Fascinating. I want to open up to the floor. We've got about 5 minutes here for questions. Sure. So, am I allowed to pick the people, or am I being here? So, right over here. Great. This is Lindsay Holloway, and she's letting me pick all of you today. I do want to say a shout out. I know this sounds odd, but Chris Chavez is here today, and it means a lot to me that she's here. And she came really to see you, but she was my date in 11th grade in Yokota, Japan.
Where?
So she's right over here. We'll say hello later, but it's kind of a cool thing.
Is this true?
But this is actually her issue.
Honestly, but before we go forward, I need to know if this is true. Is this true?
Chris? Yes, true. Put that on eBay. Okay, yes.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Georgia Antonopoulos. I'm the executive director of Thrive, which is an alliance of nonprofits here in San Mateo County. And so my question to you today is, you run a company that acts globally, but I think one of the best paths towards creating an inclusive culture is really engaging locally.
Yeah.
And so what I would love to see is all of these community-based organizations and nonprofits that we work with, that work with the local populations here, I would love to see representations from tech companies on our boards. And the smaller organizations, that's just not the case. Can CEOs like
you, quick question, yeah.
Sort of create a more compelling incentive for your tech workers to join our boards? I would love to see that.
So would I. This to me is about the workplace, right? I talked about the workforce. The workplace is when people see that leaders are participating in their communities and part of the community agenda, it creates an environment that's more welcoming for people to join. So there's no doubt. We try to do a lot in our local community. We're down south in San Jose. We try to do a lot. We open up our buildings. We host local events. We do all that stuff. So I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I'd be interested to know more. And the short answer is no doubt. No doubt.
Other question, comment?
I want to hear from your 11th grade date, Steve.
Yeah. Chris, you have a question over there? Yeah, give the mic to Chris Chavez. Everyone, this is Christine Chavez.
Oh.
She's a kind of kick-ass attorney. Be careful of her.
Oh,
yes.
no.
Excuse me, I shouldn't have said that. Go ahead.
No, thanks. Thanks, that's all true. I really appreciate the practical advice and trying to make this part of the business agenda. If you have tips on selling that within our organizations, it makes some sense, and I think the practical advice is very helpful. We're all sitting here thinking, how do we get people to believe that?
Yeah, there is this kind of toolkit question. Sheryl Sandberg tried to get at this with mentors and supporting women in management in firms. And kind of her books is sort of how-to guide, if you will, for managers. But Chris is saying, are there other elements of how-to guides that you think can help these folks sort of sell, transform their cultures?
I guess part of it depends on the company culture and what sells. Not the same messages sell in every company. Companies have their own cultures, right? If you're an analytical company, we're an analytical company, there's tons of research that says that when you reflect your markets better, you do better in the market. And that's not a doubt anymore. There's been lots of very well-documented empirical research that links inclusion to performance. Numbers work in the Valley. Data works in the Valley. It may not work in every company, but I just think leaders have to frame this issue as not only that it's personal, it is to me, but that it's part of their agenda in running a great company. It's part of what leadership is, and it's part of competing. And I just, I always think it makes life easier that way.
Right. And there was another question over here, right?
And by the way, just one other thing while we tee up that question.
Right.
I think it's incredibly important that everybody is part of this conversation. Like Cheryl is incredible, and she's advanced the agenda so far. I think everybody needs to join. You know, white men need to be part of this conversation. They can't shy away from it. I think oftentimes, like, you get invited and you think, should I do this, or am I going to get criticized as a white guy for talking about inclusion?
Or two white
Like,
guys.
you can't, or two white guys. You can't, like, start an inclusion conversation by excluding anybody.
No, we need to be
Right?
part of it. Absolutely.
And I'm not shy about it. Like, I was on a panel in Davos last year that was extraordinarily criticized because it was 4 men talking about gender inclusion. Are we not allowed, men shouldn't have this conversation? I never understood that. I'm not going to back down from it or be shy about it. We all have to be part of this discussion.
Thank you. Real quick.
Research shows that the real issue is retention, and the mid-management level is the area in Silicon Valley where training on team dynamics is the weakest. So my question to you is, how do you judge mid-level managers as part of their business units and business metrics and diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, it's a really,
In like
really
30
good,
seconds or less.
it's a really good question. We see people drop out of the workforce in mid-level. Women tend to more than men, but both do. And it's a career development issue. Like, this is back on the business agenda. We have to take career advancement and planning extraordinarily careful. It's in year 2 through 5 that people begin to say, do I have a future here? Do I have a career here? Do I belong here? And that's when you need to intervene to both help people develop themselves and show them a career path. We've shown that when you do that, you can actually alter outcomes. You can get people to stay with our company. And I do think that some of that can be tailored specifically given who might be dropping out of your workforce. So I think it's a great question, and that is exactly where the pressure point is.
Thank you. Devin, just as we close, I'm going to ask you just one last complex question. Donald Trump just won the presidency. He is meeting with a lot of folks up there. He is appointing a lot of women, interestingly, to various positions. More, it may surprise people, but in terms, no, just finish it. They may be billionairesses and others, but he is actually. But yeah, no. I mean, but my point is this. Clearly, let me finish. Clearly, the culture that Donald Trump has promulgated thus far does not look like one that is progressive, that is on the side of the issues that we're discussing, that there. Does Silicon Valley, do you think, separating from eBay for a minute, have the muscle, the backbone to kind of sort of stand up for the culture that I think you represent in the country, the soul of the country, if you will? How's that? Is that better? Yeah, but
I think I'm just going to sit on the sidelines of this. And
no.
I wrote a memo to my employees the day after the election. It went out and it went around quite a bit. And I did it because I don't care that much about politicians or politics. I care deeply about issues. If you walk around our campus, this isn't a corporate speech. Inclusion, immigration, trade built my company.
Right.
And my people care about that. And if we don't, and I'm going to fight for that. And I'm going to fight for it agnostic of politicians. I don't want to comment on any individual. I will stand up for those issues, not only because it's my job as the CEO of eBay, it's also, I believe, the best path for our country, and it's my country too. And I will speak up, and I will fight for those issues. And I suspect you'll hear other leaders in the Valley do the same.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Devin Wenig, CEO of eBay. Thank you very, very much, Devin.